Hi everyone, this is Matt Curfman with the Richmond Brothers here for July 2017 edition of Matt's Minutes. Had a couple of updates that we wanted to let you know, as well as a couple of upcoming events and some things going on to maybe mark your calendar. So first and foremost, when we look at the overall economy, we look at the market right now, we do see that there is opportunity out there in the world. Just because the S&P 500 or the Dow and the headlines are hitting reasonably high prices, it doesn't mean there aren't value opportunities out there in investments. And so high level, we at Richmond Brothers don't see at this point recession coming for maybe 1 to 2 years down the road. You know, there can always be a black swan event, there can be unforeseen circumstances, but right now that's kind of what our crystal ball is saying. And that doesn't mean that in the meantime you don't go through a period where there could be a 5 to 10% pullback in the markets. The question is, does that only end up being a pullback, or does that tip us over into recession? Pullbacks are healthy. I don't know that we'll have one right away, but I think in that 1 to 2 year time frame, I don't think that would be out of the question at all. When you think about what are some of the triggering events, what are some of the catalysts that we're looking at for continued growth, corporate earnings are really strong, consumer confidence has been reasonably high. Those are two things we look at. And when you think about the government and you think about politics, always fun topics, you know, we do think it's going to be important that there are government tax cuts that have been talked about, and some version of that, infrastructure spending. And we think the market has priced in some of that expectation, so we think the longer that it goes, the government goes, without actually making good on those promises, that's a risk, I think, as far as the market's concerned. As far as some of the holdings in your portfolio and things we manage for those of you that are clients of ours, we have been actively skimming some gains on holdings that have had pretty good performance. A lot of that is in the biotech sector, and so we do think that these companies have gone into multi-year pivot points of growth cycles, and so we don't think that the growth is done. That's why we're skimming rather than selling all, and at the same time, at this opportunity, trying to pivot into other holdings that we see our value plays. So you're replacing a growth asset maybe with another growth asset, and so that's kind of where we're at. I think as you get a year or two ahead, if we continue to use this model of skimming, we would see more of skimming off of the top and then actually building more of a downside or a cushion in the portfolio, especially if we do think we move closer to recession. Statistically, getting into 2018, we're 10 years away from the last recession. That's an incredibly long period of time. But just because that's a statistic doesn't mean that becomes the fact. So we want to be conscious of that. But at the same time, we do think it's still important to have downside protection, have different asset classes in the portfolio. We're definitely not suggesting just because we see opportunity to go all into the market and all into stocks. And so we're not to that point. We don't need to be building up huge downside protections yet. We want to pay attention to black swan events, and then I think those of you that have kind of looked through the last 1 to 2 years, you know, I think we've talked quite a bit in Matt's Minutes and other pieces that David and I have put out. You know, usually patience is rewarded, and so I think we're getting a lot of great feedback from all of you, and really happy with some of your numbers year to date. As far as upcoming events, August 4th and 5th in Jackson, a really big event. The Relay for Life starts Friday night the 4th, goes all the way into Saturday the 5th. And so that's a huge event. We're going to be out there, Team JJ at the Relay for Life. There's an incredible amount of positivity in that event, so if you can, come on out and see us. August 19th, we have a client appreciation event up at Lansing Lugnuts. At the moment, the seats that we have for a game are completely sold out. However, if you're interested in that date works, get on our waiting list, because we often find in the last week or 10 days before we get some cancellations. So we certainly want to reach out and make sure we can fully utilize that space. And then from an economic standpoint, Richmond Brothers, David and I will be hosting our halftime report on your money coming up in September. And that's a Wednesday night, September 13th, and it's going to be over at Ella Sharp. With that, I've just crossed over about 5 minutes, and so I will leave you with all those notes for the month of July. Our core value for the month is be passionate and determined, and hopefully you can see that in our voice and in our tone, but we are passionate and determined about serving you and finding opportunities to help grow your money so that you can use it to help your money last, to use for income, and of course then for you to be able to pay it forward to others in your family, friends, in your community. We're honored to have the opportunity to serve you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again next month. This is Matt Curfman signing off for Matt's Minutes, July of 2017.